right, with that, I would ask if the applicant, Ms. Manning, if you would like to address any rebuttal points.
Thank you very much. Good evening. We have a short rebuttal with Mr. LaRusso. We're open, of course, for any questions, and then I have a short closing statement. So I'd like Mr. LaRusso to please come back up. I think Tony will use the microphone.
Yes.
Okay. Is it working?
Yes, I believe it's working fine.
And, yeah.
You're still on the road. I'm not going to swear you in.
I understood.
Tony, we want to talk about two main issues here. One is lifespan, and there's been some discussion about the years 25 years and 30 years, and what I'd like you to do is explain what each year means. So explain what the 25-year lifespan means to the facility, and then the 30-year.
Okay. So the 25-year lifespan considers depreciation. It's for the rate-making part of this project. The 30-year lifespan that we talked about is the design basis. So we requested our designer to provide us a facility that will last 30 years. Therefore, it can exceed the 25 years needed to pay off the project.
Okay. And at some point between years 29 and 30, Tony, what is LNG willing to provide the council at that point?
Okay. So we'd be willing to provide an update report that would consider at that time the continued need for the project or the status of the need, a condition report of the facility, also an update on sea level rise to the extent available at that time. And essentially we do all this within what we're allowed in the regulations and laws of the day.
So we'll have to abide by any confidentiality that's required under the law at the time, correct?
Correct.
And we estimate that 29 to 30 year time frame will be around 2049 to 2050, is that correct?
Yes, if we put the plant into commission on 2020, that would be 2049,
The tank's already 45 years old right now.
And Tony, the report will include information on need as well, correct?
Correct.
And let's touch on that for a minute. How is lifespan related, if it is, in any way to need?
Well, it is related to need because we have to forecast how we're going to use this facility. So I'm going to go back to some of the points I made before, just really briefly. National Grid has to fill all its LNG tanks, not just this one, before the beginning of every winter, to make sure that they can supply their customers on the coldest days, peak gas supply. To do this reliably, we have to have access to diverse sources of supply. We have a long business relationship with the Everett terminal. We bought LNG from them for many years, and during that time they have been very reliable, provide reliable service. And the National Grid utilities expect that they may continue to purchase gas from the terminal in some form, but they still need more than one source of supply during this time frame. And in order to meet our customers' peak gas needs in the winter, not the overall gas needs, the peak gas needs. This liquefaction project fulfills that need of supply diversity.
Okay, thank you. And then moving on to our last topic on the rebuttal, and that is the rendering. May we have our exhibit 3 brought up? And Tony, so you're not tied to the screen. Okay, I bet you are. And so on that, with the rendering, Tony, just briefly explain how the color scheme has been done to blend into the surrounding environment and why that's done.
Right, so the buildings are the same texture, same color as the existing buildings on the facility, so they're designed to be that tan color. The heights of the equipment is pretty low compared to the existing tank, which is, when you take into account above the datum, it's 108 feet high, the tallest structure. With the elevated 21 feet as a baseline, the tallest structure is going to be 72 feet above above the datum that we talked about last time, the NAV DEAV.
Okay, and we're just trying to bring it up once more so the council can see it. And maybe if you can just hold that up toward the council. It's what you have seen before at the November 14th hearing, had handouts up and saw on the larger screens. We'll give it one more second and
Now imagine that on fire.
we will move on to the next hearing.
We talk about the color scheme at the
So-
table.
The topic on the rendering concludes the portion of our rebuttal for Mr. LaRusso. And at your pleasure, Mr. LaRusso may remain here for questions or any of our other witnesses from the November 14th hearing, or I can present my closing statement, whatever your pleasure is.
How does it take?
Can I ask if any council members have questions for Mr. LaRusso based on what he just testified on or earlier testimony?
How does it take now?
All right, I'm sorry, Mr. Gomez?
I'm still a little fuzzy on the decommissioning came up several times in the staff report, whatever, and I'm still fuzzy on
Public hearing, I can't
what
hear
that's
you.
about and what you're going to do.
Yeah,
Microphone.
Mr. Gomez, maybe you can bring so people can...
Yeah, I had some fuzziness, if you will, on the decommissioning, and I noticed staff had mentioned it, and it seemed to be a sticking point in several of the statements we heard and things. So if you just clarify me.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we're not going to leave an unused facility on the site, so we will remove it. There was some talk about the FERC process. There is, when we abandon it, there is a NEPA process to abandon the facility as well.
So there's a structured process that is in place or will be in place? Is that?
Yeah, it's not as complicated as trying to build one,
Understand?
but yeah, there is.
One of the question, is there a plan in place?
Has that answer been
Yeah, I
satisfied?
understand that it's being addressed, and there was some concern on that, and so I think I have the answer I need.
Sounds like a no.
Thank you.
That sounds like a no.
Yeah. So I guess we need to follow up on that. Will the facility be decommissioned? So I recall from the initial testimony back to November 14th, there was a statement to that effect. So maybe that's what Mr. Gomez is referring to and with the fuzziness.
But when it's after its useful life, it will be decommissioned. We're not going to leave abandoned equipment on the facility.
And Tony, in order to decommission, you do have to go through a FERC process, correct?
Correct.
And FERC is Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, correct?
Right.
And as part of removing equipment from the site at decommissioning, there will be an environmental assessment performed at that point as well, correct?
That's what I understand, yes.
I understand you're saying useful life, but that could be beyond the 30 years is what potentially representing. I think the understanding that we had as staff is that it would be at the end of the 30-year period that it would be decommissioned.
It's 45 years old now.
Is it going to be decommissioned at that point?
So this is where we were offering to provide the analysis. It's hard to predict fully, but as I told you before, our experience with this type of equipment is about 30 years, and that's why we put the design life at 30 years. So we expect that it's a 30-year project.
So 30
So
on
we
top
were-
of the 45.
So we address if there's any extra time or not, that was something we can address as we're approaching that 30 year.
How about you address it now?
So the company's willing to supply the report sometime between year 29 and 30 and have a discussion with the agency at that point on the need and condition of the plan, correct?
Yes.
Any further questions from council members on this topic or other testimony topics? Okay, with no questions, if you want to present your closing statement.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. On behalf of NG LNG, I would like to thank you very much for your time and attention during these hearings. From NG LNG's witnesses, you have heard testimony that addresses this council's important consistency review requirements as Mr. Fugate has described them over the past 2 hearings. Tonight, we ask that you conclude that this liquefaction project is consistent with the enforceable policies of the Coastal Resources Management Program. For over 1 year now, NG LNG has provided detailed submissions to CRMC to support its application and presented testimony at the November 14th hearing and tonight. And that information has been critical to CRMC's detailed review and thorough analysis of this project. We believe that CRMC's staff has issued a positive report for the project based on their detailed analysis of our application. Here, NG LNG has met its burden that this project is indeed consistent with the applicable policies of the program. You have heard tonight again from Mr. LaRusso about some of those key topics, and we have also given you details about the overall project during the testimony of our other witnesses on November 14th. And on the overall project, I want to pause for a minute and tell you what this project is and is not about. This project is designed to blend into the surrounding area, and as you just saw, is much smaller in comparison than the equipment on the other portions of the LNG terminal.
Okay, but we have a closing statement, I'm sorry, Ms. Main, so if you can let her get through that, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. The plant is designed to help fulfill the need for a diverse supply of natural gas in this area on peak days, like the winter days we're going to experience starting tonight and through the rest of the week. The plant is a throughput system. And what it is not a storage facility, and it is not going to increase the amount of LNG that is currently stored at the existing terminal. Now, I also want to let you know what the next steps are for this project as we move on here. When we finish with our applications before certain Rhode Island agencies, we then anticipate that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, will, around March 30th, issue its environmental assessment on this project. And then approximately 90 days thereafter, we expect that all federal agencies will provide their decisions on the project. So we continue to move forward with that process. And now I want to say in conclusion again, that this project meets the enforceable policies of the Coastal Resources Management Program, and we ask that you provide concurrence on the consistency determination. We again thank you very much for your time and attention during these hearings. Thank you.